Not bad. A little bit of a long day, but we're almost through it.
All right. Awesome. If not, please.
Good evening. Welcome to the April 1st, 2026 meeting of the Jamestown Planning Commission. Carrie, can you call the roll, please?
Michael Swistak,
Here.
Duncan Pendlebury, Christine Gentry. Diane Harrison is absent. Nick Insana
Here.
and Bernie Pfeiffer
Here.
and Dana Prestigiacomo. Here.
Thank you. Anybody here wishes to address the commission on a non-agenda item? No one? Okay, then I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing regarding the application of Emma and Miles Brennan's property located at 36 Briar Avenue and further identified as tax assessor's plat 8 lot 331 here for discussion and or action on our vote. Application, the hearing is continued from March 18th, 2026. It's an application being reviewed as Unified Development per zoning ordinance section 82-309 requiring development plan review per section 82-1102 for a tear down / rebuild within the Jamestown Village Special Development District and requiring a use variance per section 82-708 for a basement area that does not meet the required 12-inch separation from groundwater. We're reviewing updated materials, and in our packet is a draft motion. And so we'll continue to move hopefully towards a vote this evening. So before we start, Kevin, do you have anything you want to add this evening before we get into motion? Okay. Oh, first, I made a motion to continue the meeting. I need a second for that.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor of continuing the public hearing, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? No, thank you. Okay. So Kevin, so now that we're officially into the public hearing, no, you don't have any comments at this time. Okay. After reviewing the materials in the packet, anybody on the commission have anything, any issues they want to raise? No? Okay. I did have one. So at the last meeting, we talked about, I expressed some concerns about having a backup plan. And I think during the back and forth was that I think the concept of a dry well of a backup plan would be a possibility. And so we asked for something in writing, something on paper that referenced what the backup plan would be should conditions change and you wind up with a wet basement. So I didn't see anything in the packet referencing a dry well fix. You want to come up so it's easier to talk? Thank you. Yeah. So you're gonna have to get sworn in again, name, address. Yeah. Yeah.
Stephen Metrick, Demetrick. There should be something in there. One of the requirements from the last meeting was to talk to our site engineer, Mark Dowdell. And then he wrote a letter to confirm that if we did need to do a dry well, that the calculations that he originally did would cover that water. And that should have been included, his letter. Well, yeah, the sump pump, I guess, yeah, it was, I guess it's more of a verbiage thing, but it would be able to handle water from a sump pump.
Could be.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, but that, like, if he needed it worded differently, I could have him rewrite that, but that was the intention of that letter.
Yep. Okay. So, so thank you for that clarification, right? You can stay there just in case you want to weigh in or answer some questions. So then, so I went away, I'm thinking dry well, so I have a picture in my head of water discharging into a dry well. And so I went back to our town engineer, Gene Lambert, and I said, is that a viable concept? admittedly, I'm not an engineer. I'm just trying to make sure that when we get to the time that we vote on this, that I've satisfied my own concern that there is a backup plan, and if conditions change, right, we went through this, what happens if it gets wet? There's a backup plan so that there's never a neighbor or our public works director coming back to the planning commission to say, what did you do? There was no backup plan. Why is water discharging on the street or onto the neighbor's lot?
Yep.
So it's me covering my decision to vote for the granting of a variance. So back to our town engineer, and she said, her advice was that the backup plan in this case is, okay, well, we acknowledge we have a Caltech system that's intended to handle water. But her point is that Caltech systems and the one that's been designed doesn't necessarily hold as much water as you might think it does. And there are times when it can overflow. And maybe that's fine. And the water from an overflowing Caltech system may be infiltrated into the ground without causing issues to streets or neighbors. But she said, but if there were a backup solution is really a sump pump. That's the backup solution. That's the backup plan, not a dry well, an actual sump pump that would discharge onto a vegetated lawn.
Well, no, actually, the original,
Mhm.
when Mark originally designed the drainage plan for the site,
Mhm.
he's in Charlestown, so he's used to designing for
Mhm.
Westerly, Narragansett, and South Kingstown, which they have a much higher bar for site water management than this town does. So the original plan that he created to manage all of the water from the gutters with the Caltech system was larger than the Jamestown town engineer required.
Mhm.
So he issued a second plan, which was a smaller Caltech system. And what the purpose of the letter was for him to say the original system that I designed could handle discharge from a sump pump. So the sump pump wouldn't be discharged into the yard, it would be discharged into the Caltech system. The Caltech system is basically, it's a modern dry well. That's basically what it is. Another word for it. It's like calling Kleenex facial tissue.
Yep.
It's a dry well.
Okay. So,
So like we could, like, for example, like what we could add to our plans is we could add piping to the Caltech system for a future dry well. So or for a future sump pump. So if they ended up having to put a sump pump in the basement, it's all ready. You just put it in, connect the pipe, and add the Caltech system, and you're done.
okay.
Yeah.
So I think I would be satisfied with that. Does that sound plausible
Yeah,
to you?
it'd be really easy to do.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, we probably would do that. Like we prep for solar for the same reason. We had extra conduits for, when we changed from fiber optic to something else. We generally, we're planning for resilience, so
Yeah.
that's not a huge bar for us to achieve.
Nancy, does that sound plausible to you from your discussion with Jean as well?
Yes, it does. Just for clarification as to which version of the soil erosion sediment control plan that was submitted, that is the one that represents the final engineering. Now, you said the original one, which was dated in September 25, that was over-designed.
Correct.
Okay. Then there was a December 11th version,
Mhm.
and then there was a January 8th version. So which one are we going with?
Well, the first one was the over-designed one.
September
Yeah.
20th?
The second one was the corrected one that met the lower threshold for drainage that the town engineer said we needed. And the third one only corrected a typographical error in the
Oh,
water
oh.
tables.
So the January 8th, 2026,
That is the correct,
Is the
yeah,
correct
that's the one that would be submitted with the building permit. Yeah, yeah,
that's great. That's
Yep.
all I needed to know.
yeah, and it was just a typo in the water table notations that she had noted.
So it's January 8th, 2026. Okay, so a change needs to be made in the first reference to the plan the September 25 to the January 26.
Right. Okay. So, Stephen, what we were, where I was headed, we would be adding a condition that you would design and build with, the availability of a connection to a sump pump.
Yeah, like perfectly honest, like we could just build the house with the original site engineering. That's not a huge lift, you know, which would like basically we would from September. Yeah. We'd be all ready for the sump pump at that point. Like we'd have no problem doing that. That's really, I mean, they're already digging. It's just, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So we changed the design because as just for, you know, sustainability, and it's so expensive to build anything that if we can take $1,200 out, like why put $1,200 there if you're never going to need it? But now that we have a reason that makes sense, it's like, well, then we should put it back in.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
I like about that approach is that you will never get into the issue of, well, how much water is too much water that we have to go to Plan B?
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, is
Yeah,
it
yeah,
an
yeah.
inch or is it 2 inches or what?
Yeah, yeah, you're covered no matter what happens.
It's a little bit of water, or somebody thinks it's a lot, you can just take. it
Oh, yeah,
out.
you don't have to worry about it again. Yeah, I'm all for it. Yeah.
Okay, so we're returning back to the plan from
Yeah, the only thing I
September
wouldn't want to
25.
do is put the sump pump in right away. That's something I wouldn't want to do. Because yeah, because you could that's easy to add later. What's difficult is excavating the entire yard and adding a Coltech system and then probably. It's pretty insignificant though.
Our packets have the the revised drainage calculation in them, revised on January 8th, 26. It should have been in the packets. Because I've got one here. Indicating that there were 3 Coltech units required by the calculations, which admittedly were themselves based on higher numbers than required.
Yeah.
And you're intending to put 6 in, which is double
Yeah.
what was required. So
Yep.
I think I'm certainly satisfied that that meets.
So we'll go with September, irregardless of the typographical error.
Sure.
Okay, I think that resolves the problem. So just to clarify, we're going back to the September plan, which is already designed with a connection to a sump pump.
Yep.
And then, so we may clarify that in our decision. Our town engineer recommended that if there was sump pump discharge, she identified a location, rear northwest corner of the lot, which provides, in her opinion, provided the longest overland flow path for discharged water.
Oh, yeah, but if we're going to go to the Coltech system, it would go to the Coltech system.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
The sump pump goes into the.
Yeah, we wouldn't
okay,
put it
right.
on the ground. Yeah.
So there would, you're saying it would never be a case where it would discharge onto the lawn?
No, if we're gonna add the additional Coltex for the potential sump pump, then yeah, those are there for the water to go into there, so no one even know that it even happened.
Yeah, is there,
Yeah.
let me ask a question. Can a Coltech system ever overflow?
If it's poorly designed or we get the 1,000-year storm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So again, so.
Yeah, when I look at my experience with engineering, like, yeah, Noah would be afraid if we had a flood that was so great that the Coltech would overflow.
So if it overflows, where would that water go?
If it overflowed, it would just saturate the ground, but that would take an amount of water that I think we'd have more serious problems.
I guess the reason I ask is, our town engineer, gave me an example of a house built here locally in Jamestown where the Coltech system is of a smaller size and does overflow.
Yeah,
And-
then it's probably it's either poorly engineered or there could be a maintenance issue. Could have been poorly installed with the wrong soils that didn't allow for it to manage it. I know like in South Kingstown, for example, in Narragansett, the town engineer is required to inspect the Coltech systems, just like a septic system. And I don't know if you do that in Jamestown, but if it's not installed properly, it's not going to work well. So that could be why.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reasons things go wrong on a daily basis. And it's usually not the fault of the engineering or the materials themselves. It's usually the
Yeah.
humans.
I think we asked this question at the TRC, the very first TRC. Does the Caltech system require maintenance, routine maintenance? No.
Nope.
Okay. So when you talk about the inspection, you're saying that the town engineer is required to inspect the Caltech?
Yeah, in South Kingstown, there's someone from the department that comes out, and before you cover the Coltech system, they're actually looking in there to make sure it's the right size gravel was used, the right size stone was used. Yeah,
Okay. Yep.
yeah, but when you work with good contractors, they just come out and look in the hall and go, all right, you're set. You just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're not
Um,
cutting corners, which,
Yeah.
we,
So that raises the question, do we require as-built prints, or do we make sure that our building inspector takes a look at the Caltech and signs off on it, so we don't get
and
to the
some
point
towns
where?
actually just require the site engineer of record to sign off on it. So like a septic system, for example, they have to look at it, DEM looks at it.
That is
So-
how I understand the routine is here.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
All right, you're welcome.
All right, any other questions before Steve goes away?
I'll still be right over here.
Ah.
Yeah, don't worry. As long as I get to the Ganny before the kitchen closes, I'm good.
Okay, so with no other questions, any other questions for Nancy, or we move on here to motion? Couple things, yeah. Yeah, before we go on. Kevin and Stephen, did you receive a copy of our draft motion? Have you read it and gone through it? Is there anything in here that you disagree with or have issues with?
Yeah, there was one thing I wrote back about was the landscape architect language. Because the landscape designer we work with is not a licensed landscape architect, but they are a professor at URI. And their approach to landscape design is similar to ours, and I don't know a landscape architect in the state that actually operates with those values. So I asked that the language be changed to professional landscape designer.
That was part of the development plan review.
Yes, condition number 1.
Yeah, the only other thing I thought about was I don't recall if there was any instructions on, because there's a lot of stipulations about things that have to get filed and things we need to do. And this is an unusual process for us. So I just want to make sure that I have a really good instructions about who needs what, when. And I don't think there's a comprehensive list in there to make sure that we're doing our due diligence. So that would be helpful. Doesn't have to be formalized in that letter, but it'd be really nice to get something in writing that explains that.
Okay, thanks. Nancy, going back to Stephen's comment about the landscape architect, you said finding of fact 1?
Condition.
Oh, thank you. So Stephen's point was he wanted us to remove the word licensed.
Professional landscape designer.
Do you have any issues with that, given the nature of the project? Okay, Duncan, you said you had some changes?
Just
paragraph 3, I guess, of findings. In the second line, there's a pair of brackets. Don't know what those are for.
I'm sorry, which section again?
Under findings in paragraph 3,
Yes.
second line, there's a set of brackets after the word existing.
Can't recall what I took out. There must be something there.
And do you need to capitalize the word no?
No, not.
Just being very emphatic.
Yes, I was. It was a result of the
Sure.
way I had written it last time. Yeah, there's nothing there that you need to, missing that you need to be concerned about. I'll take it out.
Anybody else?
In answer to Mr. Demetric, I think with respect to the first motion here, and the condition of approval that we just discussed about the landscape plan, I think it would be appropriate to request that prior to the, be available prior to the issuance of a building permit. However, the demolition permit can go forward. Same thing with number 2, prior to issuing of the building permit. Okay. 3, we don't need it. 4, we don't need it. 5, we don't need anything. And that's it. So the next step for you, with this, if the decision is made this evening, we're going to reprint this and have it for the chairman to sign. And then it will get recorded in land evidence records, and then you can start applying for the demolition permit from there. That's it.
Okay. One point I had, the last meeting, I was told the landscape design would be a contingency of the certificate of occupancy and not of the building permit. Because that's a little bit onerous, because we're trying to,
Is that what you said? Okay.
we're trying to fast track that, and it's kind of the cart before the horse.
You're right. I remember
Yeah.
that conversation.
Okay,
So
thank
that
you.
one will be for the CO,
Yeah.
but,
You'll get it way before the CO, but
so if we can
yeah.
get the drawings before the building permit, that would be great.
yeah, that we are doing.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
And then Nancy, in terms of Mr. Demetric's question about, are you able to give him a punch list of,
Well, that's what I just did. This is gonna get recorded, and then he's gonna be able to start pulling demolition permits. Before he gets a building permit, we just need the revised architecturals. And when the project is all over, before we get to CO, we need the landscape plan. That's it.
Okay.
It'll be in here too.
okay, so let's, for the applicant and our benefit, before we go forward, let's talk about the changes. So under item 2, the record, the application submission that will be as written September, the plan dated September 8th, I'm sorry, September 29th, 2025 by Dowdell Engineering. So the applicant's committed to build the system per the very first design. Okay. Then the next change is on the 3rd page, just typographical, take out the bracket, change the text, the capitalization on the no. Under conditions of approval, we're going to change the terminology licensed landscape architect to professional landscape designer. And we're going to add at the end of that sentence that the plan will be delivered to the administrative officer prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. And then on conditions of approval 2, third line, we're going to insert after administrative officer prior to issuance of a building permit. And then that should do it. Any other changes? Kevin and Steve, oftentimes we ask the applicant if they agree with what is written and the changes we just reviewed, and that you will agree to waive the reading of all of the findings and conditions. Do you agree that, can waive that? Okay. David, we're going to do this sequentially. 2 motions, 2 votes.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that the Jamestown Planning Commission approves with conditions the development plan application of Emma and Miles Brennan for a tear down rebuild of an existing residential dwelling at 36 Briar Avenue, Assessors Plat 8, Lot 331, in accordance with the application and supporting materials, including in the CERC plan prepared for Emma and Miles Brennan, Assessors Plat 8, Lot 331, dated September 29, 2025 by Dowdell Engineering Associates LLC, and architectural plans and narrative by Kevin Baker as presented on March 24, 2026, with the final version to be approved by the administrative officer per the following findings of fact and conditions of approval as written and amended this evening. We need a second.
Second.
And discussion? Nothing. Okay, Carrie, roll call vote, please, on that motion.
Duncan Pendlebury. Christine Gentry. Nick Insana.
Aye.
Bernie Pfeiffer. Dana Prestigiacomo.
Aye.
And Michael Swistak.
Aye.
The motion for development plan review passes 6-0.
Okay, so I can make a motion regarding the use variance. I move that the Jamestown Planning Commission hereby approves with conditions the application for a use variance of Emma and Miles Brennan to retain and reuse the existing basement of the residential dwelling at 36 Briar Avenue, Assessors Plat 8, Lot 331, notwithstanding the requirement of Section 82-708 that the basement be above the high groundwater elevation by 12 inches for any new build or substantial improvement. Approval is granted in accordance with the application and supporting materials, including the CERC plan prepared for Emma and Miles Brennan, Assessors Plat 8, Lot 331, dated September 29th, 2025, by Dowdell Engineering Associates, LLC. Letter from property owners Miles and Emma Brennan dated February 17th, 2026. Letter from Mark Dowdell dated March 20th, 2026, describing as an alternative the stormwater discharge shown on the original plan, and narrative from Stephen Demetric dated March 26, 2026, describing submitted basement insulation and barrier system per the findings of fact in the memorandum. No changes.
Second.
Discussion on the motion? Okay, Carrie, roll call vote, please.
Duncan Pendlebury. Christine Gentry. Nick Insana.
Aye.
Bernie Pfeiffer. Dana Prestigiacomo.
Aye.
And Michael Swistak.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0 for the passing of the use variance.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, Stephen? All set? Thank you. So make a motion to close the public hearing?
No,
Second.
No need? Okay. Okay, no new business at this time. On the old business, we have the planning commission rules of procedure. And Nancy has given us a revision to consider. So we can start there. Nancy, do you want to give us an intro to anything to say, or do you want to walk us through section by section?
I think it might be helpful to go section by section. If anybody has anything to add or any questions, we can do it that way. So the document you received via email may have been the version all cleaned up, but the document that's before you today that has the blue rather than red lined shows things that have been removed and things have been added. So first of all, just I did a little bit of reorganizing of some of the material, and then made a few other changes that I included comments on. For the most part, it's pretty much the same. The first one was discussion of the appointed members, and then I left some of the information out, noting that the procedures for the appointment, tenure, and filling of vacancies is stated in Article 7 of the town charter. In making these changes, I had in front of me the town charter, I had the zoning code, and I also had the state law to make comparisons to, so that really the rules of procedure just kind of fill in where those documents leave off. But referring to them is usually a good thing to do, so that everyone knows where the original information comes from. If there's no questions, and on to chairperson, there was a little, there really isn't committee appointments that is conducted by the planning commission. There's only one legally required committee, and that's the technical review committee, which is discussed later on. Other committee appointments would just happen to be maybe to only 2 people from the board, because you can't have a full, you can't have a quorum, that type of thing. So I removed that from there in order to avoid questions and concerns later on. The secretary, there was a discussion last time about secretary's position. What I did was I removed some of the responsibility from the secretary, and kind of reduced it down to simply reviewing the minutes on a regular basis, just reviewing the minutes before they get sent to the board, and then filling in for in case the chair and vice chair are not available. What was taken out was the fact that the secretary was involved in other actions that are outside the meeting, and I believe that those should be maintained the responsibility of the administrative staff. So if Carrie wasn't with us, then the minutes would be basically sent to the town clerk, and it would be the town clerk to do it. That's kind of the backup plan there. So the next section is about the elections. I discussed it with the chairperson, and also there was mention last time about this 3-person committee to do elections. Understanding that probably is not very practical. So we turn to having the solicitor do the first introduction of in the election of the chairperson, and then after that, would turn it over to the chairperson.
So, I'm concerned about the original wording there about appointing a nominating committee.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I put, you mentioned this and it's maybe a point of discussion. So that was the recommendation, my alternative recommendation is there in those comments on the right. That we take that out and you replace it with the assistant solicitor to planning and zoning shall conduct an election for a chair. Chairperson.
So, okay, so the assistant solicitor, is that you, David? Okay,
Or who's ever here.
okay.
Or whoever happens to be.
Okay, all right. So, okay, so let's say so here we are in May, will be May 2026. 7 commission members, do you solicit interest for the chair position in May? So you have a slate?
Absent that at the election meeting. Yes.
Yeah.
Basically, you wouldn't chair that part of the meeting. I would ask, are there any nominations
So,
for chairperson?
Okay.
oh, that's it.
Follows Robert's.
Mhm.
But,
And
but we can do it anyway, in that sense.
we could always remind you in May that in June you need to do elections so that you can have conversations about it. And if there's anyone who has a specific interest, they could let it be known.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think that's a great alternative compared to how we've done it in the past.
Okay, so you want to take that first sentence out with respect to the nominating committee and insert my recommendation instead?
Sure. I'm okay with that.
Anyone have any questions or concerns?
No, I think it's a good plan.
Okay, great, I'll do that final version.
So then, once a chair is elected, and then you say that the chairman shall conduct elections for vice chairman and secretary, so it just follow the same process.
Correct.
Yeah,
Um,
right then and there.
entertain a nominations.
Nominations, yep. You don't need a second technically for nominations.
Yeah, you don't. Okay,
Okay. Yeah.
and actually, I would take out the next sentence with respect to vacancies, just as I took out the term of office, because those are addressed in the charter, as I said in the first section. So I will take those out.
I think the vacancies in this section, only have to do with the officers of chairperson,
Oh.
vice chair.
Okay,
So
right.
I think you
You're
could
right.
leave it.
Sorry, it's two different things.
Did we want a timing thing would be the only, so do we want to keep June? Is that a good time?
Well, your annual report and your, and the elections are usually combined in the same time, and you do it at the end of a fiscal year and going into the next fiscal year. So that's good.
Yeah, no, I just want to affirm that everyone's okay with that.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
Going back to officers, I don't recall, and it seems to be in my back of my head that somewhere, whether it be the charter or enabling, that says that the officers, chair, vice chair, secretary, don't have any greater authority or power than any other commission member. And am I dreaming that, or is that actually documented somewhere? And if it isn't,
It's documented somewhere, and
It's rules.
it might be in Robert's rules, but I believe it might actually be in a charter provision as well.
Yeah.
But I could be, I have a couple different charters in my head, as the saying goes. So
yeah,
a statement here is not out of the question. And if you'd like to put one in, we can put one in.
I think it's worth reinforcing.
Well, I think we kind of cover that with the at the very beginning when you talk about the role of the chairperson and the vice chair and the secretary.
Yeah. Good.
But it could be added to section 2 if you wanted to. If you-
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, I think you've told us stories about chair people in other places, other venues
I could tell you lots of stories.
who think that,
None of them good.
who think that the chair, the gavel gives them some
No
Greater-
bad stories here, at least.
greater power, right?
Yeah. I was going, I struck that completely and, I included mention in section 1. Because it's all in the charter. Yeah, we have to renumber. We'll renumber from there on. Yeah, so the one on the committees, I specifically called out the technical review committee. And then I said other subcommittees may be appointed by the chairperson when necessary in the implementation of the planning commission powers and duties. So.
Just real quick before we get too far ahead, I did find that reference you were looking for in the charter regarding the chair not having any additional authority. It's
Okay.
section 1002, membership and terms, subpart 4. Chair of any board, commission, or committee shall be responsible for conducting and managing meetings and shall have neither fewer nor greater powers or authorities than any other member unless specified by ordinance.
Okay.
Great.
It's in the charter.
So we didn't hallucinate it. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, well, that was the first article. There's Article 2 now. Which is meetings and rules of order. What I've added here is what the standard operating procedure is that in November of each year, there's a list of regular monthly meetings that are put on a calendar and approved by the Planning Commission. And that's a state law that gets posted and gets posted on the Secretary of State's website. I guess the only item up here for debate is my recommendation for starting the meeting earlier than well, it was 7:30, now it's 6:30. If you want to stick with 6:30 or if it was possible that folks could move it to 6 p.m. Then that's so totally for me because I live almost an hour away. So, and I just hang around in between, but I'm more, it doesn't have to be. I'm just mentioning it.
Do we think we would lose people coming to the meetings if it was too early? Or is maybe the later, like 6:30, preventing people from coming? Is there any opinion on
Well,
that?
I can tell you for professionals, they want to start as early as possible because they want to get home as early as possible. So for those who are representing individuals, 6 o'clock is a gift. They're used to 7 p.m. So, but that's all.
Duncan?
Okay.
Earlier is better for me.
You said later?
Earlier is better,
Earlier.
but
Next.
I don't think the 30 minutes is a big deal. I would probably personally lean towards 6:30. A lot of times, like tonight, I'm on duty. I'm coming from work, and our shift changes at 6. So I take leave from 6 to whenever 7:30, 8 o'clock, whatever for the meeting. I can change that, but my personal preference would probably be to stick with 6:30.
Bernie?
Keep it 6:30? Okay. 6:30 it is. Okay, and there is the ending time at 10 o'clock unless voted to extend. Ready to go with that? Okay.
Was there discussion, I remember at the last meeting, about striking the part about having to vote to extend because that runs into problems if we forget to do it, or if, you know, the meeting runs past that, anything that happens after that 10 o'clock becomes,
I-
I don't know, we discussed that at last
I
meeting.
think there are consequences if you forget to extend it, honestly. It's just kind of, as a rule of order, it's only if one of you complain, okay? But it's nice to have that as something that you do routinely, because people often inquire, how late will the meeting go? Especially if you have like big group of people here. And it gives you a reason to organize the meeting, say at 9 o'clock, say, okay, we have a rule that we don't take anything new after 10 o'clock, when we can only extend the meeting past 10 when we have a vote. Why don't we take that vote now and see how late we want to extend the meeting? Maybe take a vote and you say, okay, we'll extend tonight's meeting to 11, but that means so-and-so and so-and-so, you're going to have to be rescheduled. So it's good to have it.
Yeah.
And Nick, it's only happened once.
Oh, let's hope that
in
never happens
almost,
again.
in 5 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Bite your tongue.
Knock on wood.
And I'll be here to remind you if you need to extend it.
So, just a thought. So going from from 2 official meetings per month, that's been the routine for quite a long time, to 1. So is there any perception there that we're not working as hard as we used to, or not putting, often the people complain about the process, how long it takes to get approved. Takes, from application to a permit or approval. So is there some, or is that imagined, or just that's the only time we hear about is when people have challenging applications and it just takes longer because,
So that's what the next paragraph is for.
okay.
The additional meetings. Now, these could be work sessions like we're going to have on the 15th. But they'll always be the third Wednesday of the month like they currently are. So what I always told boards is, when it comes to this, just pencil that date in on your calendar and try to keep it available in case we need it. In some cases, like in the month of August, we'll do our darnest not to schedule anything on that Thursday, but on that Wednesday. But then it will occur occasionally and may be scheduled by the Planning Commission for long-range planning and or administrative actions requiring annual commission review. So there's some things that we need to do, like we're going to do the annual report and stuff. And then special meetings can be called by the chairperson with a majority vote of the commission members. So it doesn't have to be the third Wednesday, but we'll keep the third Wednesday as that stuff for long-range planning. But there always can be another vote. Is there additional meetings on the third Wednesday of each month? Planning and or administrative actions requiring annual, review. Annual commission review period. It's all based on that timing, okay? So I would say if, it's kind of a balance between staying till 11 o'clock and finishing things up, or scheduling another meeting in 2 weeks and bringing something back. It's always going to be an option. This just kind of. Yes, and again, that's the choice of whether or not you're gonna start it and finish it, regardless of what time it is, or if you're gonna start it, get as far as you can until 10, and then continue it, it leaves you options.
What do you guys think about just leaving that more open-ended, saying that, additional meetings on the third Wednesday of each month will occur occasionally and may be scheduled when the planning commission sees fit? And just leave it without any stipulations on why, the long-range planning or administrative actions or commission review. So that way we have the ability to schedule a meeting on the third Wednesday for whatever reason. If somebody comes in with an application, to the chair's point, we want to try to move that along quicker. Maybe we get that in on that third Wednesday, just so that we're not sort of pigeonholed into specific reasons. Yeah.
Okay, I'll bring you back, changes. So then the last thing is on this page is a reference to the Robert's Rules of Order. And how these procedures will be reviewed, are supposed to be reviewed once a year. That's actually from the Rhode Island General Law. So since it's March, I put March, but you can decide when you want to do that. Perhaps doing it in March is good because then it reminds you that you have to have the elections in June, right?
To make it the simple majority. So you already had that
Yeah.
in your rules of procedure, but some places did not.
That's for the voting, which is coming up on the next page. But the quorum has always been a simple majority.
But yes, the voting is simple majority of those present.
Of those present now. Yeah. So we'll get to that on Article 4.
But we have to have a quorum.
Right. A quorum is a simple majority of the board members. Okay. So the agendas that we I mentioned a little about maybe moving some things around. But again, these are all just recommendations. Has anyone taken a look at it and have any ideas?
So with regard to section 2, where we kind of have the listing of different agenda items, I would almost have I would recommend an introductory sentence there saying the following may be included on a typical agenda, or could include but are not limited to. Because sometimes you might want, for instance, one of those special meetings, like it's a heavy agenda. You may not want, for instance, I'll throw out everybody's favorite citizens non-agenda request or something to that effect. Like it's just, we're going to get straight to business. You might not want communications on those, right? I'm also generally not a fan of old business, new business. I understand the differentiation as long as we're putting something like specific under there. In each case, like the OMA the Open Meetings Act gets a little ornery about those sometimes, but we typically have been very good at defining what's old business, and if there's none, stating none. So,
That's what I was thinking when I suggested maybe putting them together as development plan review, which doesn't require public hearing, and listing public hearings separately. And you could do that under old business, under new business or old business that way. One thing that I was thinking of is sometimes like you'll have an agenda and you want to move things around on the agenda. And I find that it's good to have a spot called changes to the agenda so that the order of the agenda, or if things are going to be continued that are later in the agenda, you can do that right away, that kind of thing. So those are my recommendations, and that's kind of where I'm at. But you can decide.
You're asking for input, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I have a strong feeling one way or another how you organize the meeting, whatever works best for.
You'd be surprised, some chairmans do. Anyone else have any suggestions or?
No, I would just reiterate the solicitor's input there that we don't make it specific, that may include but not limited to sort of language that I think we should add that sentence.
Okay. Yep, okay, got it. Recommend. All right, I'll throw something else together that.
Yeah, I think, so maybe it's worth talking about. So we've seen, let's pick on the town council for a minute. They may have a lengthy agenda, and some council member may say, hey, I want to move that from the end to the beginning for the benefit of somebody who's in the audience, or maybe for some other reason, maybe they got to cut out early. Is there some preference that should be given to somebody who's been here before and coming back a second time?
Well, that's kind of the reason for old business and new business, right? When you first come to the board, you're under new business, and if it gets continued, you end up kind of hopping over that and being up in new business, old business. Okay, so that's kind of what it does. And then, yeah, in anything under new business is, it could be the way it came in, or you put the shorter items first, public hearing second.
Yeah, I mean, our agendas are never that big, but I would be offended if I got the agenda in the mail and then the chairperson or somebody said, well, let's move this person from front to back, bottom to top, and I miss it.
Would only be doing that like if someone at the bottom of the list had withdrew their application, or they're not, if something came up, they're not here tonight. And so they want to continue, well, you could vote on moving it up for the purpose of continuing it. And then you would go ahead and do a motion to continue it. It's basically.
I mean, as far as the rules of procedure are concerned, I don't think you necessarily need to put anything in there. But what I would say is we could add to the agenda, and I have this in a few communities, whether it's planning, zoning, council, etc., an item right at the top that says agenda items may be taken in any order, right? As economy, or the meeting or the chair or the commission sees fit, something to that effect. And the most common is there's an item on the agenda, might be second or third application, and something happened before the meeting. That maybe the applicant wants to continue it because they want a chance to talk with the neighbors or something like that. You move it to the beginning and say, oh, this matter is going to be continued, and we just do the continuance, and it can help clear out the room. But it's that kind of flexibility. It doesn't need to be in the rules of procedure. You can just add that as an item on the agenda. You've always had that ability under state law, but if you want to give people notice of that possibility, you put it right on the agenda. And granted, the agenda's disclaimers have grown over the years. It's not my fault. Don't blame me. It might be my advice. But yeah, just putting it, after the live stream blurb that you have now would probably make the most sense, personally.
So the other thing is, I was thinking under communications, that can be just about anything. That can be reports. Usually communications that are received that are associated with one of the other items on the agenda would be discussed when you get to that item. The citizens' non-agenda requests, you've had that on there. I think it's a very good thing. I think many communities don't do that, but people are always there saying, hey, I was hoping to be able to ask you something, or as long as those items are not voted on, except when necessary to put them on a future agenda or send it to someone, that's okay.
I was gonna say, no vote, period.
No vote,
We
period.
stay with, so,
Yeah,
I won't
yeah.
fault you for this, but so our advice has always been, and, we give the Newport Cliff Walk analogy, right? You could walk right, I could give you the advice to walk right up at the edge, but if you stumble, as can happen by accident,
Yeah.
you're gonna go over. So my advice and our office's advice is always to try to keep you a couple of feet away from that. So the Attorney General likes to say, well, you can amend your agenda at the meeting and have, a discussion, but what ends up happening is a consensus can be considered a vote, and votes are a no-no. So we just say for discussion, right? We can take in the comments and that's it, but yeah.
Also, the members of the commission can also,
Right.
bring something up during that time, so.
Mhm.
Anyway, and I took out executive session because I personally don't believe that a planning commission, even a zoning board, has any reason to go into executive session. Because many of the exceptions that you can go into executive session usually don't apply to you at all. So, so I just removed that from the list.
And I'll just say never. I can foresee a reason, but it's rare. And so it's no need to put it in here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you can always add it if you have to. It doesn't have to be in there every time.
So the question, so now that we have some approval authority for variances and can the planning commission now be sued?
So any appeal of your decisions now goes directly to Superior Court.
Yes.
Oh.
And the way some people like to appeal, they will list you individually, but it's only in your professional capacity. You cannot be sued in your individual capacity. That
Okay.
doesn't mean a careless person wouldn't make that distinction, but the town by state law and probably your charter has to indemnify you. So that's a long way of saying yes.
Right, but so the council will use executive session to discuss litigation.
Mhm.
Would there be a case where we would have,
It- So to my point I was alluding to earlier, I could foresee the possibility, now that you have direct appeals in particular, that if there was a very specific decision on one of your appeals that required a remand back to this board for further hearing or further findings or whatever the case may be, in an executive session prior to that remand of explaining what that decision meant might be in order. It's only in my career when that's happened, even with the zoning board, that's maybe happened once or twice. And I don't think any time's here. So it could happen, but
Even that's
It would
a
be a-
conversation you
yeah.
could have public.
potentially.
Say, by the way, this is coming back to you, this is why. And
I would say 90 times out of 100, yes, you could have that discussion in public. There could be a few instances, where I might want to make the recommendation, we go into closed session to talk about something. Correct.
okay,
We're going to think happy thoughts.
yes,
We're
always,
not going to get appealed.
always, yes. Okay, I'll scratch that up a little bit more and give it back to you next, May meeting. Moving on to the next one, I made a distinction between meetings, and decision-making. So now this is the required votes for decisions, which changed from the majority of the members to the majority of the members present at the meeting. So you need 4 for a quorum. So out of the 4, you'll need you need 3 for an approval or a denial. Okay? That's basically what it is. So I redid that.
And that's the new state law
That's
in
the new-
action.
Yeah, that's like
Newish.
it's 2 years old now, 3 years old, 23. Okay. I added in the annual reporting, and I gave you the reference there where it's required by Rhode Island general laws. My suggestion was for that would be at the end of the fiscal, kind of, closing up the fiscal year. So we'll be doing the first, set of reporting, the end of June, beginning of July. Okay? And we can talk more about, what that entails. I have some experience with that, so, we can talk about it further. Is there a need to advertise when you're going to do amendments to these rules of procedure? I didn't think thought that was kind of over the top.
So there isn't the requirement in state law, the charter or ordinance, to my knowledge. However, what I would say is because it is in your rules of procedure right now, when we go to amend these, whether we continue to include that language or not is a policy choice, but we will need to advertise because that is in the current version of the rules of procedure.
Right?
So it's a good discussion question.
Advertised in the Jamestown Press or in the agenda?
James, advertise implies the press or equivalent. So
This must
the
be
Newport.
advertised at a regular planning commission meeting.
So yeah, I'm not going there. What I would say is noticed is the legalese when you're putting something on an agenda. Advertised implies in a decision, in a newspaper of record, so that could be the Jamestown Press, that could be the Newport Daily News, it could be the Projo. But that's what that implies.
Okay.
We can get rid of it. I think
Yeah.
you'll reach more people via email than you will in
Paper.
the paper of any kind, but that's a policy choice of the board.
Yeah.
What is the current process right now? The proposed amendment must be advertised at a regular planning commission meeting and then placed on the agenda of a subsequent meeting. How do we advertise it at the meeting now? Should we want to make a change? Just by discussing it?
So the way things work here in town is that it gets put on an agenda for you to vote to put it out to advertisement, and then you come back at another meeting after it's been advertised and hold the hearing on whether or not to amend it.
I'm a big proponent of public notice, but that does seem a little bit redundant and onerous.
It's a bit much, but you do that for your ordinances. So this is probably mimicking what's in your charter for ordinance changes.
Okay.
So I was at the end of this discussion, I was going to recommend, to save some time, is that when it comes back in May with all of these different markups we're doing now, there is an additional agenda item right below it to order it advertised for a subsequent meeting.
Okay. We can do that.
And I will note your subdivision regs also have to follow this process when you amend.
Yeah,
those.
that's.
So, but that's in state law.
So this says 2/3 of the current membership are required to amend the rules. So if there's 6 of them there, 4 would have to agree to the amendments. That I think is okay. The next line I was thinking might say the proposed amendment must, going further, the proposed amendment must be noted at a regular planning commission meeting prior to the meeting, prior to consideration, and placed on a subsequent agenda, or agenda of a subsequent meeting. That's what I meant. So in other words, we put it on the regular planning commission meeting and note it that it's coming up for a review the next meeting. And then we can put it on the next meeting's agenda.
I may have some tweaking to that, but I think generally speaking, yes. And it would be like noticed and maybe, and I think you should hold up, it is internal to you, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you want to kind of give it a little bit of formality as if it were a public hearing, right?
Yes.
So it's that kind of, are we ready to send this to, a public hearing is going to be the question at, call it the first meeting. And if it is, then okay. And maybe you want some kind of notice of the proposed changes on the town website or like the town has to have, in accordance with the state law, land use, a land use mail serve, right? Where you send out all of the,
People sign up for it.
so,
yeah.
so sending it out on that list perhaps. And I don't know if the town has its own email blast system. I assume it does. Most do, but something to that effect. So those are things to consider. I just don't know what we have here. And maybe that's something we come back with of, that step in the process. But yeah, we can save the advertising dollars. I would recommend.
If the upcoming meetings section in the Jamestown Press, if we said to them, put changing rules of procedure, like there's a meeting on this day and they're changing rules of procedure,
You
with
gotta
that,
Oh, that's an advertisement. So they're going to make you
that's
pay
it.
for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll do.
Okay.
We'll get.
no, they
Just
do,
application.
they do that with every week based on the calendar.
Oh, they do it.
Yeah, they,
Okay. All right.
that little section. So,
That one always be there. I don't want to,
oh,
yeah.
okay.
I will say,
You're right.
different. We just gotta do it this year, though. We make a change about the advertising, not advertising.
I would say Jamestown's probably an exception in this, that if we actually do want people to know, the press is probably reaching way more people than an email. I know in a lot of towns, it's probably not the case because their papers aren't nearly as good as ours, but everybody.
While it lasts.
Everybody in town reads the press. I mean, that's where I find it usually. And the emails tend to find their way into a junk folder, especially when they come from municipalities. So just a little food for thought.
Yep.
I don't think the cost of advertising is very onerous for the community. Yeah, especially when weighed against the good of public input and public.
So we'll
Yes.
plan on discussing these changes more in May, and then if you want to advertise for a vote, that you're gonna have a public hearing vote on it, that could be later in May or June. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll put an action item
An item.
in addition to the discussion that we're having next regular meeting.
Okay, well, that brings us to Article 6 on the Technical Review Committee. The duties and a lot of the information with respect to the Technical Review Committee is in Section 82.410 of the zoning ordinance. And there's also discussion in the land development regulations. So a couple of items there, quick changes. The meetings have been on the third Wednesday, preceding the regular monthly meeting of the zoning board and the planning commission. We do use it sometimes to prepare matters for the zoning board, just as we do for the planning commission. So I added that. Posting agenda and minutes, that's normal, open meetings law and notification, to the applicants.
Do we want to give ourselves the ability to hold a TRC sometime other than the third Wednesday?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It is sometime
Other-
other than
other.
Wednesday?
Yeah.
Additional
Oh.
meetings.
Okay, unless otherwise scheduled.
As needed.
It happens. Sometimes applicants will come in, they'll need to go to planning, then followed by zoning. They'll schedule them for the same month.
Okay,
Something goes off kilter at planning, they need to get something, yeah.
okay, that's fine.
Things happen.
Then again, if you are so strict and only had them on the third Wednesday and something needs to go a little faster and we can't,
Okay,
that's how we get blamed for slowing down the process.
okay. I'll just like
Just as needed.
as needed.
Yeah.
I'll just add as needed there.
Yeah, I think Carrie will tell you though, that since we went to the once a month schedule, which hasn't been for that long, maybe a year or less,
Yeah, a year,
it hasn't been a problem, right? Because people know ahead of time,
right.
they plan for it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and what I've done with because now I'm doing both zoning and planning, is I've come up with a schedule that I'm going to explain to you and Duncan, if you ever come visit. That the schedules are now organized with the submission deadlines so that you can get to the TRC on the third Wednesday of the month, and then if they've already, the planning commission's already seen you or everything else is put together, you can see them 2 weeks later. And it also works with the zoning board schedule, so. Okay, well, I think that's it for me.
So at the last meeting, we talked about social media and public commentary by commissioners outside of meetings. And Nancy thought you had a short comment that you might want to include. Want to talk about that?
Yeah, I wasn't quite certain what the direction that you were going at the meeting, but I talked to Mike today and I provided him with some background information. He has a few copies of it up there for you. There's a difference between ex parte contacts and like talking about things in publicly discussing pending matters does kind of have the same chilling effect as an ex parte contact would, which is generally a one-sided private discussion. So it's important to be aware of that, although, there's nothing in the Rhode Island ethics and transparency laws that tell an official that they don't have the right to express their opinion and viewpoints outside of a public forum. But there was one brief statement that I suggested, and I don't know, Mike, if you want to take it from here and mention that.
Yeah, sure. So the concern was if somebody on the commission is on social media, saying something publicly, or semi-publicly, and then we make a decision after that comment is made, can somebody step up and say, well, you were prejudiced before you took the vote. You made up your mind before you heard the evidence. So that was the concern.
There is a differentiation between your decision-making authority, like when you're voting on a use variance or approving a subdivision, and when you're doing policy-related stuff or recommending zoning ordinance revisions and that kind of thing. In that case, you're not quasi-judicial. It's half administrative, half legislative kind of thing. And when it comes to that, transparency is still very important. But sometimes things are said outside of the public realm, outside of the public meeting. They can get misinterpreted. And then we just spend a little time like spinning our wheels once we get back together again. So noting that difference, the one statement that I recommended to Mike was a commission member shall refrain from ex parte contacts, one-sided private discussions with interested parties, and shall refrain from publicly discussing pending matters outside of a public meeting. So, again, that's kind of wraps up all of the ethics laws to begin with,
Yeah.
but that's,
I mean, one would say I can't talk, but then do we disclose to the city or to Kay this person did
yes.
approach me outside of the city?
Yep.
So the simple answer, yep, and it's a good question. So the simple answer is practically that's going to happen, right? That you can't avoid it. But what we would say is when that application, in most cases, comes before the commission, before the start of the presentation, just say, Mr. Chairman, I need to take a moment to acknowledge that I ran into the applicant at McQuaid's. He or she wanted to talk about the application, and I informed them that I can't talk about it. And despite anything he may have said, I still believe I can be objective and fair and hear this application. Like, yep, you can do that, and that doesn't require a disclosure in public. It's really just the applicant, right? Like, in a butter that may be opposed to it or something, or in favor, it doesn't matter. But like someone that's an interested party in the in a specific matter, if you have enough of a conversation, you want to, it's always better to disclose and then state that you're still able to be fair and objective and hear the application. And to that point, and to this language that Nancy had drafted, I'd recommend if you're going to do it, put it as probably a Article 4, Section 4, a new section, and just call it Commissioner Conduct or something to that effect, and add, I would say, an additional line that commissioners shall at all times avoid the appearance of impropriety, and in order to be fair and objective in weighing matters that may come before them. Just an additional line to what's there, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, well said. I got thinking about things that, if, so I haven't been recused a number of times, and then being recused, okay, say, oh, okay, now I can say whatever I want, whatever I want to, wherever I want. And that may be fine, Nancy, per freedom of speech. I'm not restricted, but David, as you call it, that's a bad look.
It's the appearance of impropriety is the phrase I like to use, but yeah, practically it can look bad, right?
Yeah.
And you want to avoid that because you are sitting in a quasi-judicial role a lot of times, and so you are looked to by the community and under state law to be fair and objective in weighing things, even if they might be unpopular, right? That happens from time to time, and so to the extent that you are able to avoid even the look of being unfair or biased or something, that's always better, right? Now, practically speaking, you can put these in these rules of procedure. It's a guide. You don't have any police power over yourselves, really. It's more of like you're putting a statement out there about how you want to be seen and conduct yourselves. But a violation of that rule, so to speak, is going to be hard for, let's say, you as a body to enforce, right? So there's that other way of cutting it. So that would be my recommendation, and it's common. You see that in a lot of rules of procedure, I would say, for any kind of board, but this kind of a board, I do recommend it. That's always your best bet.
Well, if I may, well, I agree with that. There is also the other side of this conversation, which is the, the transparency side, especially when we're dealing with the policy decisions that we make, not, putting aside the votes, but when we discuss policy, informing the public is critically important. And the decisions that we make, especially surrounding things like the comprehensive plan, are far reaching and impactful for the community. And oftentimes the community that's impacted by them has absolutely no idea that they're going on. And while we can say, we put out an agenda, it's on the agenda, just like we were talking earlier about how the meetings at 6 or 7 might not be convenient for people to attend, the vast majority of the population doesn't come to the meetings because they're very inconveniently timed. Everybody's got lives, and nobody's checking the town website for the details of the planning commission agenda, right? So limiting with the language of "and shall refrain from publicly discussing pending matters outside of a public meeting," I think contradicts the later line of Rhode Island's ethics and transparency laws generally protect an official's right to express their opinions and viewpoints in a public forum, right? The two don't really jive to me. So I think we should, at least think about that distinction between the two, right? Especially when it comes to discussion of policy, comp plan being the big policy decision we make here. Right. Yeah, I agree with it totally in that regard. For applications, there's absolutely here only. Yeah, but that would defeat the purpose. The whole idea is to discuss policy in a broader public forum with the public, right? So that they're aware and are given an opportunity to, provide their input. Well, I'm not a big user of social media myself, especially Facebook. That is admittedly where people get their information. It's a different time now. Not everybody can, like I said, come to a meeting, and not everybody's going to even be able to understand the language that's in the agenda, should they have the wherewithal to even locate it. So by limiting our ability to discuss policy matters in public forums outside of this room, I think does the public a disservice.
I think to your point, there may be a bigger picture that we can discuss over the next months is, do we need to promote some of this stuff more broadly or more frequently? But as a group, not individuals doing it, but as a planning commission, if we think we can do a better job of informing people of those things that are important. So it just may be
Yeah,
a
like that.
solution that we may need to communicate better.
And one of those efforts we're going to take on April 15th, when we're going to have a discussion on fair housing and have an opportunity to share information that we can then take to the public on the affordable housing issue in particular. So, and we do have a responsibility to do that, Ian, because the Planning Commission is responsible for implementing the comprehensive plan. So to a certain extent, what we do on the 15th is going to be kind of an introduction to, that type of work. Okay.
It would be a coordinated, thoughtful communication plan, different than what each meeting is, maybe on different topics. So there's a lot of ways we could maybe do a better job. We think it through. Yeah. I think there's two
So-
dimensions, though. One
y-
of them is, what can we, or be allowed to say individually on our own agenda versus as a planning commission that we all agree is the right tone and message and timing and all that kind of stuff.
No, I mean, it's not, it's not an easy, thing all the time, right? So this is one of those things where there is a fair amount of gray, right? There are certain, like, we'll say clearly, wrong actions, and there are clearly good actions, and my job is to steer you towards the good actions, right? But there's a lot of that gray, as we say. The safest thing, and using that cliff walk analogy once again, right, that I use all the time when it comes to the Open Meetings Act or the Access to Public Records Act, which again are about public transparency and whatnot. I'm going to err on the side of keeping you out of trouble, right? And that's always going to be my advice. So my advice, even on those policy matters, and while I understand the need sometimes to try to, garner support or garner interest about, particular policies that are being discussed that could affect, a swath of people within town. I would encourage those discussions happen here and not, in individual capacity, because what can happen and through no fault of anybody is, a statement is made, we'll say, whether it's a letter to the editor in the old, we'll say an old fashioned way, more likely the Facebook comment or something. And then another person from the board responds or reacts to it. That could be in agreement, could be in disagreement, doesn't matter. And then a third, and then a fourth. And when that fourth happens, we've got what's known as a rolling quorum. And now you've violated state law. And so, again, none of that was intentional. It just happens. And especially in an immediate reaction type of world, right? Where you see something and you react, and it's very easy. You can do it from your phone. And you don't have to hit, the same button on the phone 6 times to get one letter, right? People forget how we used to text in that sense. I think it's called T9 texting, someone told me the other day. Anyway, the point being is those types of things can happen very quickly. And regardless, that appearance of impropriety can just be on display that way. And again, it wasn't intended that way. It just happened. And it all started with trying to get more attention on a matter that affects a lot of people that may not be getting the attention it deserves, right? So it's a tough call, but the easiest legal position for me to say is you just refrain from doing it. Other than the extent of, hey, we're talking about this, come to the meeting. And it literally is that short. There is an explanation. It's just, we're talking about things, come to the meeting, right? And there's nothing wrong with saying that. We're going to talk about it at this meeting. I have some thoughts. People have other thoughts. You might agree with mine or disagree with mine, but you should come to the meeting. How do you write that into a policy, right? That fine line distinction, we can try. But what I would say is, sometimes less is more. And this combination of the wording that I've added to Nancy's, I think is as broad and soft, so to speak, in guidance as I can come up with. And you don't get into the distinctions of that's an application and we're going to trample on due process rights versus it's a matter of public policy that this board is charged with giving an advisory opinion on and on and on. You know what I mean? So, I'm trying to do this or give that type of language in a way that, at least gives some kind of a pause of, should I say this? Should I not say this? And using those as the guard, like that as a soft guardrail to try and steer you and keep you away from going over that cliff inadvertently. So there's a lot of mixed metaphors in there. I apologize. I'm not sure I answered your question though.
So we could discuss this more when you see the revised version. But, any other question? Don't make anything up.
Okay, so anything else before we move off of this? Okay, so Nancy, you're gonna continue to fine tune this. Thanks. And Nancy, do you have anything else to add? Okay, all right. So we need entertain a motion to approve the minutes of March 18th, 2026.
So moved.
Need a second? Discussion? Any changes? I did have one item, Carrie, on page 204 at the bottom, Roman letter I. Letter I. That's, I think her name was Kelly Fowler. Oh. Oh, so that's the Irish for Kelly. Okay. Okay, anybody else with anything? All in favor of approving the minutes as written, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody oppose? Anybody? A motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Aye, thank you.
I just had a friend reach out who was watching the meeting and he told me that the camera wasn't pointed at us the whole time. Pointed at them.
Yeah, I noticed that
You guys
when
are
you would turn
stars
to look
tonight.
at me, and I was like, wait a minute,
I don't know how to fix it, but I will know moving forward. I will find out.
They were watching you. So half of Newport Fire Department was at least.
Fortunately, there wasn't much.
That lighting is not. Yeah, you're up.
No, not yet.
Oh, we have to wait for our friend to get approved. It's future land use. And once we approve, then we can. So, nothing's current versus. Last week I went to the office.
Wait, you're not.
And, oh, I was there. I was getting something out. Building up. Anyway. And said, well, we're ducking out, I can see you, and she said, "Oh, and then I went back to work. So I think I asked